Hello, YouTube and X. It's your main man BTM here, back to the Black Tiger Miner News Network. And we are back for the pre show or part one or the beginning of the Trump Crypto Summit. And just triple checking something real quick. The summit apparently hasn't started yet, but I got some pre videos to show you guys before the actual summit. And when the summit starts, we'll click over to that as well. So let me see what we got here. Let me know where you're from in the comments. Don't forget to live, share, and subscribe. So we see here the summit starts in 28.23 minutes, March 4th at 2 o'clock. There is some pre-videos. So I was going to run through the pre-videos real quick. Let me know what you guys think. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and hit your main man up with a super chat. Trying to grow the Black Tiger Miner News Network. We're here for you with news you can use. Let's go. Also, put your favorite crypto in the chat. So let's start with, wait a minute. Let me start with this guy. See if we can add some volume here. I'm trying to make sure I get the sound right. I didn't hear it the first time, so I don't know if it was wrong or something was missing. So let me go back and double check the audio is on. Let's see here. Try it again.
Studies at the Brookings Institute. He's also the former Deputy Assistant Secretary of the Treasury and former Chief Economist of the Senate Banking Committee. And I've listened to the podcast. You are also very good at making this understandable for so many of us that don't even understand what crypto is, really, as much as we try. Can you put it in layman's terms?
Yeah. So look, cryptocurrency is an asset. It's something like.
All right. Thanks for confirming. The sound is on. Let's go. So, summit at the White House. Let's see here. Check the bubbles real quick. There's some green coming. Looks like people are coming back to the market and back to the video.
People use Bitcoin in a way that they used gold. Once upon a time, gold had intrinsic value in coins. Now it's a commodity. It's also used in the financial markets as a method for volatility or hedge if you're concerned about inflation. And then there are a series of other things that are called meme coins. They remind me a lot more of Beanie Babies or when I was younger, baseball cards. Trump himself
has one.
Trump has one. Everyone seems to have one.
Right.
There's one called Fart Coin that for a while had the same market capitalization as Papa John's. And this is where I get concerned because I know what Papa John's does. It brings pizza to my house. My kids love it. We can debate how good the pizza is. I'm a little bit of a pizza snob maybe, but Papa John's does something. What do these cryptos do?
What do they do?
Well,
Tell us.
Some of them are used for things like capital control, ransomware, other points of view. Others are used for assets and speculation. Look, a lot of people have gotten rich trading in crypto, right? A lot of people saw this as a market in the future of a limited, scarce commodity. There are only going to be so many Bitcoins, and there's going to be a fundamental need for them, or people are going to think there's a need for them, like in gold or palladium or any of these other classic metals, and they've appreciated a lot in value. But there's an important one thing I really want folks to understand is that a lot of times people say crypto is a payment mechanism. We're going to be buying things.
Right.
Bought anything in a Bitcoin or Ethereum?
No.
Right? Crypto's been here almost 20 years. I got my first email address in 1990. By 2010, I emailed everything. Not that many things went in the envelopes, right? Think about over 20 years how fast email was adopted. Same with the internet. Crypto is not a payment mechanism. People are not buying and selling things in Bitcoin and Ethereum and Solana, and they're probably not going to be for the foreseeable future.
So then what's the point? What's the advantage? Is there an advantage? Because you mentioned gold, and I think, oh, I understand that. A gold bar, that's worth something. I could go to a pawn shop. If I get desperate, I can get money for that. What do I get for owning Bitcoin?
So for Bitcoin, you get what somebody else thinks a Bitcoin is worth. And some people want to be able to use Bitcoin. It's the number one thing that's used for ransomware, right? Somebody takes a hold of your computer and you have to pay them off. I'm not saying that's a good thing. That's obviously a bad thing.
Right.
But it creates a demand for the asset class. There are other people that are using this as a hedge that think of it like, well, why does gold have value, right? Once upon a time, there were gold coins, gold jewelry. There's some, metallic things that need gold or platinum or whatever, but diamonds, think about diamonds, right? Girl's best friend. On the other hand, right, their value
Girls,
that not
men too.
Oh, the De Beers story is interesting. They've tried to market it many times, and there's laboratory uses for diamonds. They're commercial, but there's commercial uses. But it's also fixed amount, a supply that's controlled by a cartel. Bitcoin is a fixed amount, and so if you think the world grows, there's going to be more demand. It's a speculation.
See, and gosh, I mean, that makes, when you say it's a speculation, that makes me nervous. Why would we want to use or bet on or invest in speculation?
Well, I mean, people do that all the time in the stock market, right? And so I'm not here to say, as a society, we're moving more towards speculation. Look at the growth in gambling.
Who makes money from the speculation? The government, us, the
people who started Bitcoin. Well, I'm worried about Trump doing a meme coin in this situation brings a host of ethical concerns.
Right, because that's making money for himself.
Donald Trump. And it's how you trade in, how you trade out of this. There's some real concerns, but I do want to distinguish between the meme coin phenomenon and the actual underlying cryptos. There's the bullish use case for this is that we're going to create a digital form of money on the internet and for different transactions that aren't going to want to be US dollars or euros or something else.
Okay, that makes sense. I can understand that.
You could, right.
Continue.
And that in these digital forms of money, they're going to be transacted. And people are going to choose to use Bitcoin or Ethereum or one of the old standard cryptos. And some of the new ones are arguing, well, we have this new feature to it, right? Once upon a time, we might have had a Yahoo email or a Hotmail. Now Gmail came up with an email server that a lot of people use. And so crypto is trying to innovate there.
What about oversight, though? How do you?
Well, this is a real concern. The Securities and Exchange Commission basically just threw up its hands on meme coins and said, these aren't securities. Right? These are like Beanie Babies or baseball cards that, the SEC doesn't examine on this. Forgeries, oversights, hacks.
Shady
You've seen
business.
A lot of these things. A lot. There's good reason to be concerned. Now, crypto is currently under most anti-money laundering. Just because you're using Bitcoin doesn't escape you from this. Some companies in the crypto space have tried to embrace that and develop systems to be able to comply. Others have wanted to skirt around the edges. You see this in a stable coin called Tether, which is the largest stable coin in the world, still hasn't given a full audit. One of its big investors is now the Secretary of Commerce.
So now Trump is going to hold this summit, this crypto summit. He has a crypto czar, David Sachs. What are you going to be paying attention to? Why have this summit?
Well, he's promoting it. I mean, there's a bit of a pump this thing up. I think he's going to announce, and he's already talked about a strategic reserve, like the U.S. Oil strategic reserve. At first, I think this will just be Bitcoin the U.S. government has taken. So the U.S. government owns a lot of Bitcoin because it's found a lot of criminals, and a lot of criminals have used Bitcoin, and it seized this Bitcoin. Some of it sold, some of it kept. That it kept has gone up in value. So I suspect he repurposes this. Now, what I'm concerned is he's going to try to use taxpayer money to go out and buy more. He's also said, which is concerning, it'll be more than Bitcoin. And then he'll be able to kind of control which currencies go in and out of the strategic return, which the market will see as a signal for who's going to be the winners and losers in this. And then you have a whole host of conflicts of interest. But I suspect that. The second thing that I'm keeping an eye on is the taxation of this. Because one of the reasons why crypto is not taken off as a payment mechanism is how it's taxed. In that if you're a business and you take crypto for a good, say, you know, I buy
what comes out of our
I buy a
pocket?
pizza, right? And then I go and I use the crypto as a business to buy some pizza sauce, right? So I sell a pizza for a Bitcoin and then I buy a Bitcoin's worth of pizza sauce. That Bitcoin's gone up or down in value. Right now, if I'm a business, I have to pay a capital gains tax on that change in value, which is very difficult from a compliance point of view. When you do things in US dollars, if the dollar goes up 2%, 5%, you don't pay capital gains. I'm keeping an eye. If Trump could well try to remove that as a way to promote more usage of crypto, and that would juice the crypto market.
A lot to follow. He has a crypto czar. We have Crypto Klein. We're going to be bringing you back, Aaron, as we continue to follow this, probably right after the summit. Would love to have you back.
I'd love to be back.
All
Thanks,
right.
Garrett.
Thank you.
So moving forward, let's see here. I think there was another video. Go to Bloomberg.
You know, one thing that we've been talking a lot about is when they announced the strategic Bitcoin reserve, that there were a number of assets named. And then on the other hand, after you saw the SEC really roll back a lot of those lawsuits that they really put towards the industry, this idea that a token listing boom could ensue really started to hit the mind of investors. What does it mean for the types of assets that might
coming up? We're excited to see the pivot away from regulation by enforcement. We're excited to see Congress moving forward, the SEC Crypto Task Force. These are all very positive developments, especially after the environment we've seen here in the United States after the last 3 years.
So what exactly do you want to see from this administration when it comes to policy? If you could sit down and write policy, what do you want to see?
Well, you know, a lot of us have been working on it for a number of years here in the United States and abroad. Our primary focus has been on getting market structure legislation done. We've seen incredible bipartisan momentum, both in the House and Senate towards that goal. And, you know, we believe Congress has the opportunity to act decisively here this year to get a bill signed and put into law.
Welcome back. Major players in the crypto industry went all in on President Trump, and tomorrow he'll be hosting a cryptocurrency summit at the White House. My guest tonight, an entrepreneur and crypto advocate, Les Forsythe, up late with me tonight here on the Final Five for the first time. Welcome in. Good to see you.
I really appreciate you having me.
Let's talk about this because we have a White House for the first time that really has embraced the idea of cryptocurrency. I guess the question is, what do they do with that embrace from the industry?
I think, you know, I've been in cryptocurrencies, digital currency since 2013 when I became an advisor to Ripple, which is one of the bigger layer ones. This president has probably done more for the digital currency industry in 2 months than I've seen in the last 9 years. So, you know, the interesting thing about the summit that's coming up is how much the industry is embracing it. And it's the hottest ticket in town in some ways because everyone has something to say around it right now.
And there's been one thing about regulation or how you approach that, but there's also about how the government itself is getting involved. The president signing an executive order on this crypto reserve that is really the first of its kind. So is this a matter of is this a continuance of that strategy, or how do you look at that?
I mean, I look at it in a very specific way because in some ways I'm involved in that process from the standpoint that the U.S. Marshal Service since 2019 has been putting out RFPs for people to different companies to manage these currencies, and they've essentially failed about 6 times trying to figure it out. You know, the one thing that we've seen with this administration, DOGE, is taking inefficiencies and trying to fix them. In our case, we're in the second protest and probably going to the third one because the basics of handling digital currencies are complex. It's not like selling a boat or real estate. And so I think, when they talk about this digital reserve and he just signed the executive order, it's where you're going to get the assets from. And there's only two ways to do it. You can buy them or you can take them from what's been forfeited. And there's about 20 billion that, is held pre-forfeiture and post-forfeiture. So it's interesting.
So with all this right now, I think when you look at the general public, there's still a lot of people who are skeptical about crypto and the viability. And is that something? Is it a wise investment? And also, I know there's been a lot of focus on how the Biden administration approached it and the regulators versus the Trump administration right now. So how do you convince maybe a skeptical public that the government wants to get on board with this? Why that's a wise investment?
Well, I'll cover the first thing first. We've been around a long time and we did everything kind of through a real regulatory process, first with California, then the SEC. And it was incredibly difficult with, the former administration, especially with Gary Gensler at the SEC. Now you're seeing change across the board because that's what's coming from the White House. And that's what's that's where all the enthusiasm is coming from. In terms of, how to get the public to really respond to it, well, they eventually do respond to new asset classes. I often think to myself about commodities, and the first time someone sold a pork belly, well, it just makes me laugh because people would be saying it's like a tulip. It's
yeah.
And digital currencies are dynamic. They're just like any other asset class. You look at Bitcoin; it's a store of value, the way gold is, and then you look at all these other currencies that are incredibly dynamic that have different characteristics, whether it's payment rails or other functionality.
So what do you want to see happen tomorrow with the White House convening this really first of its kind summit?
I think it's really interesting, the selections, in terms of the companies that are there. These are a lot of companies that have created a lot of these technologies. They're issuers, and it's going to be really interesting to see what comes out of it. I'm surprised that the executive order for the Bitcoin reserve happened today. I thought that would be the big announcement.
Yeah.
What I'd like to see is, what they're going to do with alternative currencies. With Gensler in office, innovation left this country, and that was incredibly problematic. Now they're really embracing innovation. Bo Hines, who they brought in, this is someone that I've known for quite a while, and he was always concerned about the SEC before and kind of overreach. And you saw innovation leave this country, and we want to keep it here. And that's what's so great about these alternative currencies. They're American-made, a lot of the incredibly successful ones. So we want to see all that technology developed on top of it.
Yeah, well, considering how we have it's almost like another space race. The race to succeed in cryptocurrency. We're going to see a lot of this happening. Les, great to meet you. Thanks for spending time. We appreciate you. And the Final Five is back right after this.
Donald Trump is set to host the first White House crypto summit on March 7, and it could.
We're still waiting for the summit to start. We have what is it?
Welcome back. Major players in the crypto industry went all in on President.
8 minutes. What to know about the cryptocurrency plans. See what this one's starting.
President Trump is holding the first crypto summit at the White House tomorrow, featuring investors, CEOs, and founders of crypto companies. Many in that world also hope that Trump spells out a clearer path involving little regulation in the future. And Trump says he will announce the details of a new crypto reserve for the federal government.
Estimates vary widely, but surveys have found anywhere from 7 to 28% of U.S. adults invest in crypto. The market's total value is estimated around $3 trillion at the moment. There are also real concerns about the stability of crypto and similar digital assets and whether President Trump has potential conflicts of interest. Our Paul Salman breaks it down for us.
Let's start with some basics. A cryptocurrency like Bitcoin is a bit of computer code, really just a unique string of dozens of characters that identifies your ownership of some strictly digital asset, existing only in what my mother disparagingly called cyberspace.
So that's really different than most of the other assets that we think about in the world. Bitcoin itself is classified as a commodity, like things like gold, but those commodities have a real world analog component. There's gold sitting in a vault somewhere, there's a bar, or there's a coin. Bitcoin's purely digital, digital first.
When I first covered cryptocurrency back in 2013, one Bitcoin was worth about $125. 5 years later, more than 7,000. Now, a whole Bitcoin is selling near 90,000. So what's its appeal?
If I want to send money to somebody, it has to pass through multiple institutions to get to them. With crypto, I don't need to wait. The money is liquid. You can have it instantly. It's almost free to send it. And that is innovation. It's just better.
And Bitcoin is supposed to be even scarcer than gold, as there's an absolute limit to the supply, unlike government currencies like the dollar, which can suffer inflation, and in cases like Germany in 1923, and Zimbabwe and Venezuela more recently, hyperinflation. Plus, all transactions are publicly displayed on something called a blockchain, tracked on every computer that uses the software.
Another huge component of whether or not something is a good store of value is whether people believe in it, whether they've decided it's a good store of value. So it's kind of got these dual sides. You need to have certain properties that we can talk about pretty rationally, but then there's this narrative component.
One part of the narrative, Bitcoin will gradually replace currencies like the dollar as a form of payment, but given the volatility of its value.
If you're talking to anyone who's saying that Bitcoin is going to be used for payments, that's kind of a fringe idea. Most Bitcoiners now just stick to the idea that the price will go up forever and that we will all get rich.
Okay, that's a digital asset like Bitcoin, Ether, Solana, and now thousands of others. But what about meme coins in general and the Trump coin in particular?
Meme coins are crypto assets that are themed around a specific idea or sometimes a person. Generally, there is no business behind a meme coin project. There's no sort of greater purpose, but they are used as vehicles for speculation.
Meme coins have become very popular of late. One of the most well-known is Dogecoin, long hyped by Elon Musk. It's based on a Shiba Inu dog meme and has had enduring value, but most meme coins don't.
The asset is worth whatever you can sell it for, and you better try to do it quick before it goes to zero.
There are over 5 million meme coins. 99% of them go to zero.
It's a game. The goal, get in early and hope that, to use the old Wall Street expression, a greater fool will come along and pay a higher price.
We call it vaporware. There's no promise or utility with a meme coin other than the connection to the idea.
In January, President Trump announced his own meme coin.
The Trump token was one of the biggest meme coins that we've ever seen launched. President Trump, just before his inauguration, launched a meme coin themed around himself. Shortly after, his wife launched a meme coin called Melania Token, which came a couple of days later.
What happened when the Trump meme coin came out on the market?
Insanity. It was one of the craziest nights I've ever experienced in crypto, ever. Like, it was nuts because no one believed that it was real. Everyone thought it was a scam. Everyone thought that his account was hacked.
But the Trump coin was real. 1 billion of them to be released over 3 years. 200 million were released to the market. The coin's creators own the remaining 800 million.
I was like, okay, I'm going to put a little bit of money into this because if I'm wrong, that's going to suck. And this is the amount of money that I'm okay with just completely losing.
In fact, Laranja says he made a little money on his Trump coin bet, but if you invested late, you sure didn't.
A small number of people got in early and profited from this Trump coin. The majority of people who bought the coin ended up losing money. And they can see this because you can track transactions on the blockchain.
Hundreds of thousands of crypto accounts lost money on the bet, amounting to billions in cumulative losses. Meanwhile, the Trump-affiliated creators of the coin made some $100 million in fees alone, plus presumably profits from the coin itself.
About 80% of the token supply was allocated to Trump and Trump entities. And so based on the token price, he potentially makes quite a lot of money off of that token.
But to some in the crypto community, the Trump coin's downside is more that it's a gateway to scamming.
because he basically opened the floodgates for people to scam without being scared of it. People in the space call it crime season. That's what started. Crime season started.
Now, President Trump's views on crypto have evolved. In 2021, he called Bitcoin a scam. But with the Biden administration tough on crypto in general, supporters began to back Trump and his re-election bid.
David Bailey, who runs Bitcoin Magazine, which is the organizer of the annual Bitcoin conference that draws thousands of Bitcoiners from around the world. He got together a group of a few dozen of the top Bitcoin investors and got them to agree to donate the maximum amount to Trump, which, if you count all the committees and everything, is $844,600 each.
Trump's pledge?
The United States will be the crypto capital of the planet and the Bitcoin superpower of the world.
In part by overhauling regulations.
And so far, he's taken a number of steps in that direction. SEC has been dropping investigations and lawsuits against a number of crypto companies. One of the SEC lawyers who took the lead on some of these crypto enforcement actions has been punished by being transferred to the IT department. I mean, there's a huge conflict of interest here. Trump has his own crypto businesses, and his administration is now deciding an entirely new set of rules that are going to govern this industry.
Trump's also planning a U.S. crypto strategic reserve to include Bitcoin and other tokens, which could boost the value of the president's own crypto ventures, of which there are several.
So it started with him launching several NFT projects that were themed around him. He also is a major beneficiary of a company called World Liberty Financial, which is a crypto-based project that plans to launch some sort of a crypto application in the near future. He receives something like 75% of the proceeds from that project. His Truth Social platform, which he owns, has been talking about launching a crypto segment where they would allow for crypto trading. They've spoken about holding crypto assets themselves. So he has very deep involvement in the crypto world these days.
And that raises another issue.
Members of the government are not supposed to receive money from people who are trying to influence policy, and these new crypto projects provide a very direct way for such people to do so, often in ways that can be a little bit more challenging to trace than, say, a bank transfer.
If that is, anyone is trying to trace them at all. For the PBS NewsHour, Paul Salman.
So keeping it moving, I think there was this one. Where are we at? This guy, 3 minutes. So this should lead us into the
Bitcoin trading above 90,000 after the White House issued an executive order establishing a strategic Bitcoin reserve. It was actually initially met with disappointment, but we've now seen a bit of a reversal here with Bitcoin moving to the upside. Joining us now from the White House with more is Yahoo Finance's own Jennifer Schomburger. Jen.
Good morning, Shauna. President Trump officially issuing an executive order Thursday night establishing a strategic Bitcoin reserve, just as the president is set to host the first ever crypto summit from the White House this afternoon. Now, this reserve will consist of Bitcoin owned by the federal government that was seized as part of criminal or civil asset forfeiture proceedings. White House crypto czar David Sacks, it means that taxpayers will not pay a dime. Sacks estimates the U.S. government owns about 200,000 Bitcoin, but says there has never been a complete audit. Now, the executive order asks for a full accounting of the federal government's crypto holdings. Sacks says the U.S. will not sell Bitcoin once it is in the reserve and will be kept as a store of value. He said, quote, the reserve is like a digital Fort Knox for the cryptocurrency, often called digital gold. Now, this executive order also directs the secretaries of the Treasury and the Commerce to come up with a budget-neutral strategy to purchase more Bitcoin, provided it does not cost the taxpayers extra money. This executive order also creates a second crypto fund, a U.S. digital asset stockpile that will consist of crypto other than Bitcoin, and it will be solely comprised of crypto seized from criminals. The government will not look to purchase extra crypto like it will with the Bitcoin fund. Now, separately, Senator Elizabeth Warren sent a letter to David Sachs this morning questioning him about potential conflicts of interest. Sachs, however, has said on Twitter previously that he has sold all of his crypto holdings prior to entering this administration. He also sold a $74,000 position in Bitwise's ETF on Monday. Now, Shauna, this creation of the strategic Bitcoin reserve fulfills the president's campaign pledge, and it was order number 1 as part of the president's digital asset working group started at the very beginning of his administration. Back to you.
And Jen, certainly when we start to think about maybe what could come out of the meeting later on this afternoon, obviously this gives us some sort of insight into how the administration is thinking about the industry at large. But from your reporting, the sourcing that you've been doing, what are you expecting to hear in a couple of hours from now?
I think there's going to be a lot of excitement around this. The mood is pretty euphoric here at the White House, as well as inside the industry. Coinbase's CEO, Brian Armstrong, said this morning on Twitter that, quote, "It's incredible execution from the Trump administration. Coinbase is going to be hosting a reception, in fact, following the summit this afternoon, set for 3 p.m. here at the White House, with industry officials and members of the administration. But, you know, we're all going to be looking for more color on how this is going to work, what the aim really is here for, because crypto, while it is known as digital gold, is a bit different than gold. And so will this create some sort of a floor under Bitcoin? And what will that mean for the industry? I mean, this is clearly the administration's way of trying to put the U.S. at the forefront of crypto in the global arena. So looking for many more details this afternoon.
All right, Jen, thanks so much. We're looking forward to your reporting from there.
So here we go again. It is time for the live, and there's nothing here yet. So this is MSNBC, and this is CNBC. So I guess we wait. Let me know if you guys are seeing it on the news or if it's somewhere else. But for some reason, this always happens. So I don't know. But it is 2 p.m. It says 2 p.m. What is going on, folks? So let me, I guess we'll click another video real quick while we wait.
Welcome back. Major players in the crypto industry went all in on President Trump, and tomorrow he'll be hosting a cryptocurrency summit at the White House. My guest tonight, an entrepreneur in crypto.
Actually, we already seen that one. So let me see here. What else we got? See what Chainlink has to say while we wait. Every time these guys are late. Interesting, but not. Yeah, Burbs. I knew it was gonna. I didn't know, but it was kind of weird. I hope it isn't all hype. I hope something happens.
Give us everything you know at this point about tomorrow's summit. What information do you have?
Yeah, so I know the folks attending. I know the time, which will be in the afternoon. I know that I think the leadership of the U.S. In the global financial system as it transitions into the Web3 format will probably be an interesting topic to discuss. I also know there's 2 key pieces of legislation in DC right now around the stablecoin bill and market structure. Those are likely topics to be discussed. But from what I can tell about the administration's goals and David Sachs' statements and kind of the direction there, I think the general direction is how do you create a level of leadership from the United States in the Web3 economy? And how does the US financial system, as it transitions into a Web3 blockchain-powered format, how does it remain the dominant leading financial system in the global system?
Speaking of the global system here, what would really move the needle? Because there's so many things being discussed that you have to wonder what should take priority. You have the lawsuits being dropped, and on one hand, that would certainly increase activity, but a strategic Bitcoin reserve, should that come before other things, such as stablecoin legislation? Arguably, a lot of the industry would have wanted to have that conversation come up first.
Yeah, I think that the need for clear regulation from the market structure bill and the stablecoin bill are topics that allow the U.S. financial system to clarify and adopt blockchain technology beyond whatever's in the reserve, right? So the reserve, I think, can serve as a backstop for an asset-backed kind of view of the U.S. economy or the U.S. dollar. And so the reserve has its own role to play, just like a gold reserve has its own role to play. Then there's a number of mechanisms and questions around how do you create the proper regulation so that the U.S. is the financial system where critical base assets are generated and then repackaged across into other financial systems. And then you have various questions around compliance and stable coins and these things. So I think there's almost two categories of questions. One question is how does the reserve work? And another question is how does the US financial system become the dominant force in the new version of the global financial system, which is powered by blockchains and smart contracts and Oracle networks.
CoinDesk has verified that strategy chair Michael Saylor, Coinbase CEO Brian Armstrong, Chainlink Labs co-founder Sergey Nazarov, and Exodus CEO JP Richardson will be attending the White House Crypto Summit hosted by US President Donald Trump this Friday. Some of those names are on an unverified chart circulating social media, wrought with spelling errors, that purportedly lists who will be attending this week's highly anticipated summit, and they include top players in the crypto industry. Robinhood CEO Vlad Tenev also hinted he would attend, saying on X, "See you soon, DC." Trump's crypto and AI czar, David Sachs, and Bo Hines, the executive director of the president's working group on digital assets, will represent the White House. Sachs has suggested that a crypto strategic reserve plan consisting of Bitcoin and other top cryptocurrencies will be discussed at the summit.
Did you hear that the White House is going to have a crypto summit? A lot of people could think, hey, it's a good idea. It's a big business. Learn more. But this White House is more than just open to learning.
But look what happened on Monday. The rally fizzling after the excitement turned to skepticism. That back and forth about tariffs this week, it's hit risk assets. Look what's happened to the equity market, crypto included. Bitcoin did fall as low as $81,400. That was on Wednesday, but over the last 5 days, it is actually up by about 3.8%, Shonali.
Right, that 5-day chart, the 7-day chart, these are things that are important to look at, and the price levels as well. Also important to look at the tokens that Trump suggested as additions to that strategic crypto reserve of the inclusion of lesser known tokens, at least to the broader public, such as XRP, Solana, and Cardano. This was met with questions about the project's merits. It was also controversial in the crypto community as well, because many believe that Bitcoin should be the main asset to look at. Yet the others are being suggested. At the same time, investors try to figure out what these assets are going to mean for the future of cryptocurrencies. Cardano, Tim, is up 38% nonetheless in the past 7 days, even with an 8.5% decline today.
Yeah, certainly a big theme on our program today is going to be why these things were included in President Trump's comments over the weekend. A lot of people asking questions. But before that, tomorrow the White House will host a number of crypto executives for the first ever summit, coordinated by AI and crypto czar David Sachs. Robinhood CEO Vlad Tenev will be there. And here's what he told us last week about Sachs.
I'm excited about David Sachs coming in, and actually, if you saw our Investor Day, crypto and AI are the two technology trends that we believe will shape Robinhood's future and the future of the financial industry. So actually seeing that the government is aligning itself with these trends and making sure that the U.S. is number one, I think it'll help us.
Now, here for some context of the summit and the reserve, Bloomberg's Zeke Fox. And my big question here is you did have a lot of crypto executives going down to the White House, including at that big gala around the inauguration. Is this just a hype session, or are there actionable things to come out of this, particularly when most of the actions, frankly, happening in Congress when it comes to the biggest moves for crypto ahead?
No, I think this meeting will be big. I mean, just a couple of years ago, under the Biden administration, the U.S. government was trying to put a lot of these companies out of business. The SEC was suing them. Now, Trump has tossed those lawsuits, but we have to see what new rules will be created for crypto. So these guys all have a chance to press their case. Also, to try to get their coins in the strategic reserve.
All right, Bloomberg Zeke Fox. Check out Zeke's book, Number Go Up, wherever you can buy books these days. And it's a lot of places, so just buy the book. Well, Chainlink founder Sergey Nazarov will be one of those folks at the summit, and he joins us now. Sergey, good to have you with us. Give us everything you know at this point about tomorrow's summit. What information do you have?
Yeah, so I know the folks attending. I know the time, which will be in the afternoon. I know that I think the leadership of the U.S. In the global financial system as it transitions into the Web3 format will probably be an interesting topic to discuss. I also know there's two key pieces of legislation in D.C. right now around the stablecoin bill and market structure. Those are likely topics to be discussed. But from what I can tell about the administration's goals and David Sachs' statements and kind of the direction there, I think the general direction is how do you create a level of leadership from the United States in the Web3 economy? And how does the US financial system, as it transitions into a Web3 blockchain-powered format, how does it remain the dominant leading financial system in the global system?
Speaking of the global system here, what would really move the needle? Because there's so many things being discussed that you have to wonder what should take priority. You have the lawsuits being dropped, and on one hand, that would certainly increase activity, but a strategic Bitcoin reserve, should that come before other things such as stablecoin legislation? Arguably, a lot of the industry would have wanted to have that conversation come up first.
Yeah, I think that the need for clear regulation from the market structure bill and the stablecoin bill are topics that allow the U.S. financial system to clarify and adopt blockchain technology beyond whatever's in the reserve, right? So the reserve, I think, can serve as a backstop for an asset-backed kind of view of the U.S. economy or the U.S. dollar. And so the reserve has its own role to play, just like a gold reserve has its own role to play. Then there's a number of mechanisms and questions around how do you create the proper regulation so that the US is the financial system where critical base assets are generated and then repackaged across into other financial systems. And then you have various questions around compliance and stable coins and these things. So I think there's almost two categories of questions. One question is how does a reserve work? And another question is how does the US financial system become the dominant force in the new version of the global financial system, which is powered by blockchains and smart contracts and Oracle networks?
You know, I want to bring back in our own Zeke Fox here for part of this conversation because we're talking so much here about what the outcomes are for this meeting. Zeke, what do you think is going to be the most tangible thing? We already, to your point, saw some of these lawsuits from the SEC really start to be rolled back, but what else?
Yeah, I mean, we know that the SEC has said most of these cryptocurrencies are not securities, therefore they don't fall into our jurisdiction. But who is going to regulate them? Does that mean that they are the CFTC's business now? I think people at this meeting are going to have a lot of opinions about what should happen.
Sergey, I want to talk a little bit to you about this strategic reserve, this idea that, you know, there are a lot of folks in the crypto industry who say, yeah, we should have a reserve, but then you have the Bitcoin maxis who over the weekend and in the early part of the week spent a lot of time saying, wait a second, why are we seeing some of these lesser known digital tokens be included in President Trump's comments around this? What say you?
I think it's important to keep in mind what the role of a reserve is. So a reserve is almost like a backstop, and in the asset-backed view, kind of a way to justify the underlying security of an asset, like in this case, the US financial system, the US economy, the dollar, right? So what you would want from a reserve, in my opinion, and what you want from like a gold reserve is that asset-backed view, that asset is inversely correlated with some other set of events, right? So if there's some set of extreme events, gold becomes more valuable. And so this is why the central banks have all been buying gold in record numbers. And so the crypto reserve or any reserve really has to create this inversely correlated relationship, right? You're basically practicing diversification. And so then the question becomes, once you define what the role of a reserve is, what is the benefit of including one coin or another coin in that reserve? And the fundamental answer to that is that it creates this inversely correlated relationship with something else happening that you're not currently protected against. And so the question there is, how does a reserve composed of these various tokens give you that greater assurance of being protected and inversely correlated and diversified against these other events. And it seems like the general idea right now is to have an index, right? So you have an index of tokens that basically create an inverse correlation on a holistic industry basis rather than just through Bitcoin. But Bitcoin does have a very clear thesis that it is inversely correlated with certain events in the state actor world, how the traditional financial system is developing. So I would view a crypto reserve as a mechanism for diversification and a way to create an asset backstop for the US economy, US financial system, US dollar, and so on.
Sergey, there are quite a lot of US dollars out there. Even in the kind of most extreme versions of the reserve that have been proposed, like Cynthia Lummis's plan to have the US spend $100 billion of taxpayer money on buying Bitcoins, that wouldn't really be very big compared to the amount of dollars out there. How is this reserve actually going to help support anything? Or do you think it'll be much, much bigger?
I mean, you could say the same about the gold reserve, right? The gold reserve doesn't support anywhere near the amount of dollars in existence. This happened, when we went off the gold standard. And so I don't think reserves fundamentally function the way that reserves used to function. But I do think that at the same time, the thesis of diversification does make sense. It's one of the most basic kind of theses of the financial system and markets. And so if you're creating reserves or you're going back towards the pattern of having reserves, and the sovereign wealth fund might be another one of these things where it's a pattern of some kind of reserves of some other assets. You would ideally, if you were making reserves for yourself or for your company, you would practice diversification. So the way that I view it is not that it has to one-to-one match with everything. That possibility is lost to us when we went off the gold standard. It's really, I think, a matter of what is the composition of a reserve. Right now, the composition is gold, which is definitely inversely correlated with various negative global events. Now there's another category of reserve, such as Bitcoin and whatever other assets that fall into the category of a crypto reserve. And then maybe there's another category of the reserve, which is the assets in the sovereign wealth fund. But I think if you add all of those up together with gold, you still won't meet the standard of one-to-one backing of every US dollar. That's just not how fractional reserve banking works. That's not how fiat works, right? Fiat is let there be. Okay, we went off the gold standard and that's it. That was the choice.
Sergey, we got to leave it there. Looking forward to seeing what you find out tomorrow. That is Chainlink co-founder Sergey Nazarov and our own Bloomberg Zeke Fox. Now, I want to point out also that we do have Bitcoin that are near session lows, as you pointed out to me a little earlier, Tim. We have risk appetite across the board in markets, pretty significant because all the major indices are really near session lows, S&P 500, NASDAQ 100, but Bitcoin has now dropped back below that 89,000 level. And that, of course, shows you how much volatility you've seen, even with that exuberance in the industry. Risk can catch up with you.
Yeah, Bitcoin down 1.5% right now. Ether down 0.9%. XRP down about higher by about 3.1%.
And coming up, what does the summit in the White House mean for digital asset regulation? We're going to ask the Deputy General Counsel of Kraken. And to access all the latest data and news on crypto, check out CRYP Go on the terminal. This is Bloomberg.
So, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I don't know what's going on. I'm trying to find information of why the summit hasn't started yet. But clearly, you see here, several news outlets are supposed to be broadcasting live. Has not started yet. So, I don't know what's going on here. Why the broadcast has not started. So I'm probably going to play this video out and start another live at 3-ish, I guess 3:30ish to see when it starts. But let me get back to this one and we'll start part 2 whenever the summit starts.
the crypto industry awaiting that big White House digital asset summit tomorrow and what it might mean for blockchain policy under the Trump administration. Kraken Deputy General Counsel Jonathan Shakim joins us now. You know, one thing that we've been talking a lot about is when they announced the strategic Bitcoin reserve, that there were a number of assets named. And then on the other hand, after you saw the SEC really roll back a lot of those lawsuits that they really put towards the industry, this idea that a token listing boom could ensue really started to hit the mind of investors. What does it mean for the types of assets that might proliferate in the crypto industry, good, bad, or ugly?
Thanks for having me on today. It's great to be here. Yeah, you know, Kraken's been actively engaged in policymaking here in Washington and other core markets. So we're really excited to see the crypto summit coming up. We're excited to see the pivot away from regulation by enforcement. We're excited to see Congress moving forward, the SEC Crypto Task Force. These are all very positive developments, especially after the environment we've seen here in the United States after the last 3 years.
So what exactly do you want to see from this administration when it comes to policy? If you could sit down and write policy, what do you want to see?
Well, you know, a lot of us have been working on it for a number of years here in the United States and abroad. Our primary focus has been on getting market structure legislation done. We've seen incredible bipartisan momentum, both in the House and Senate towards that goal. And, you know, we believe Congress has the opportunity to act decisively here this year to get a bill signed and put into law.
When you think about the future of where exchanges like yours are going, what do you think that the realm of possibility is in terms of expansion into more digital assets, given the changes that you're seeing? What's the direct impact, in other words?
You know, regulatory clarity, whether it's here in the United States or abroad, and, you know, I'll mention we operate a global business. We've already seen major markets take this foundational first step to bring centralized exchanges and businesses like Kraken into the regulatory perimeter. That clarity allows for investment and growth in a way that we haven't seen here in the United States. So I think as we pivot towards regulatory clarity here in the United States, it's going to be exciting opportunities for, you know, core centralized crypto markets. I think it's going to continue to power traditional market investment allocation into crypto markets. And look, we're also moving forward, as many others are, with on-chain markets and decentralized finance. So a lot of exciting things to come here. But that regulatory clarity is going to allow that investment and growth that we haven't seen
Jonathan,
the last couple.
Well, you and the other folks in the crypto industry like to use the term regulatory clarity. You might call it regulatory clarity. Perhaps critics out there might say that this could mean the guardrails are off and consumers out there might not have the same protections that they had in previous years. Do consumers need to be protected in this industry?
Absolutely. You know, Kraken was founded over 13 years ago, and we've held customer asset protection, consumer protection is the foundation of our business. And that's what's allowed us to grow and thrive. That's what's made us one of the leading markets for the professional trading community. It's that security, transparency, and trust that really helps markets evolve. And that's been Kraken's story. I think with respect to regulatory clarity, there are a lot of issues out there in the policy arena. And, you know, if we look at the SEC Crypto Task Force, there's a number, dozens and dozens of questions. But one thing we do know is that this foundational first step of bringing centralized exchanges like Kraken is one of the most important for that policymakers can take.
One question I have with regulatory clarity, do you think, yes or no, that Kraken can make it to public markets this year, given the volatility?
Well, I can't speak to any specific. I can't speak to any specifics on the timeline, but I can say that, you know, IPO and the next stage of capital growth for our company has been one of many goals for us as we look to expand our business, not just here in the United States, but globally. So very exciting times ahead.
We certainly appreciate you joining us. It's Kraken's Jonathan Yahim joining us this afternoon. Well, coming up, Bitcoin out of session low right now. Kavita Gupta of Delta Blockchain joins us next to talk volatility. This is Bloomberg. Bitcoin at a session low right now, down about 1.8%, 88,700. For more, we bring in Delta blockchain founder Kavitha Gupta here on set in New York. The sell-off that we're seeing, the volatility that we're seeing, is it all related to will he or won't he when it comes to tariffs?
100%. And not only about tariffs, right? I mean, there's so many announcements done. Do we not need Congress to approve any of them? Like, I feel like the market is asking from one extreme of the pendulum, we are moving to the other extreme of the pendulum. Now we have strategic reserves, now like not only for Bitcoin, but a lot of other currencies which people were not expecting. We are saying maybe expectedly no capital gains at all, like no taxes if you hold it for more than 1 year. I think it is amazing. These are all the dream bites which every crypto holder for last 10 years wanted. Are we really going to go through all this stuff, and how much changes to that does really entangle?
Well, let's go back to the reserve for a moment here, because there has been so much debate, a lot of skepticism, even from the crypto community, particularly those who believe in Bitcoin the most, of what the purpose of the reserve is, why these other tokens are involved. Explain what this does from the perspective of the American economy, an American citizen. Why would they want this to happen?
100%. Like, coming from a traditional World Bank IFC background, like if you have a petroleum reserve, if you have commodities like gold and silver reserves, yes, in case of a war, in case of, God forbid, something really bad happens, you can use that to have some value to American people. I mean, I do believe in crypto. I'm a holder for 10 years, but I don't understand how does reserve solve that problem in case everything really disappears on this earth.
So you're not in favor of some sort of strategic crypto reserve?
I just don't understand the value. And even
I think critics would say the value is people who have crypto make more money because it's a supply and demand question.
But it's not about the people who have
But it's not about people. Like, we are already making more money.
I think critics might say that it is about people. But I mean, that's certainly one view. But I think a cynic might say, well, who's had access to the president? People who have a lot of these assets, they want the value of those assets to go up. And one way to do that is for the US government to buy those assets.
So if that is the definition of creating a reserve, absolutely right, then there should be a pharmaceutical reserves. There should be a lot of, like, all the lobbies can create their own reserves. I'm very happy that there is a crypto reserve, right? But if you really ask me fundamentally, econometric wise, does it make sense? I don't see it, because we are still in a very volatile atmosphere with cryptocurrency. They have not found plus minus 10% like any other commodity. On top of that, Bitcoin and ETH, when you have a lot of other currencies which did not even have their ETF approval.
You're a bull on some of those currencies as well.
Yes, as a trader, yes.
The risk that those currencies do not work out, or they do not grow as fast, what kind of risk does that pose for America if there is a reserve that includes them?
Yeah, it's a basket, right? And you suddenly have two AAA standards, Bitcoin and ETH, and then you have baskets of other currencies which are still developing. And then on top of that news, what I see next is World Financial Liberty Reserves have SUI and like a bunch of other stuff. So for me, it's a bit of a confusion. Something which you just said, Tim, whom are we serving here? How are we serving them? And on top of that, what about the Congress? Do they get to say and approve it? Or is it going to be a presidential judgment?
Ultimately, does this hurt the space?
I think not in a short term, but you can already see the lack of confidence, because everything right is happening with respect to optics, but the market does not have liquidity. People are not putting their money in. And actually, I think we are suffering because exactly I said, the pendulum has moved so far that is it even real? Is it going to be sustainable? Are we going to stick to it? I mean, even we are thinking about it.
Kavitha, we thank you so very much for your time. That is Delta blockchain founder Kavitha Gupta. Tim,
just to clarify what I was saying, I find me somebody who doesn't have these assets who's pushing for some sort of strategic reserve.
I agree with you 100%, but unless they're giving everyone a Bitcoin at birth, I don't see how it would equally benefit everybody.
I think that's
because
absolutely
have those
a fair. 100% agree with you.
But we are so excited to hear the readout from this summit tomorrow and all the news ahead. That's all for Bloomberg Crypto today. Join us again next week, because we'll have that readout from you from the White House, and even more debate on how this industry should evolve next. This is Bloomberg.
There's been a lot of talk lately about cryptocurrency, but what exactly is it and how does it work? Well, 7 News reporter Brendan McNamara joins us live in the studio with those answers. Brendan.
Bailey, cryptocurrency is a digital currency that runs through a decentralized computer network. Now, unlike traditional money, crypto is not reliant on any government or bank and only exists digitally. The first cryptocurrency was Bitcoin, released back in 2009. Cryptocurrencies are gaining popularity as the technology advances and becomes more accessible to people. President Trump is planning the first ever crypto summit to be held at the White House. The administration and key
This is the
industry
trophy,
figures are
but
expected
it's
to
not
establish
finished
clear guidelines
because
and
it's
expand
unlike
oversight
any other trophy.
while
There is a key.
fostering innovation.
No
regulation
wow.
on it right now. They're trying
There
to
is
put
no other sports trophy like that.
what Trump wants to do. There's a reserve
Yeah,
for
yeah, yeah.
dollars, as everybody knows. The Federal Reserve
Oh, you
runs
gotta
that
be kidding.
money supply. He wants to create a reserve using several of the crypto exchanges, like the ones I just talked about, and put those in a reserve to have a reserve backing cryptocurrencies as well as a reserve backing the dollar.
Trump would also like to form a cryptocurrency reserve by using several existing exchanges. Jason Haswell, managing director of the Monteverde Group, says the idea would create a reserve backing cryptocurrency, much like how the Federal Reserve backs the dollar. As cryptocurrency becomes more advanced, it can provide financial services to those who may not be able to access it through traditional means, according to Haswell. Now, the cryptocurrency summit takes place this Friday, March 7th at the White House, so be sure to stay with 7 News and WTRF.com for the latest. Reporting live in the 7 News studio, I'm Brendan McNamara, working for you.
Thanks, Brendan.
All right, guys, it's BTM back. I don't know what's going on. If the live summit is going to be televised or not, but it'd be kind of weird to have a summit and nobody's talking. And it was supposed to start at 2, but I'm going to shut it down and I guess we'll start another video if something does start or happen. Thanks for joining. Thanks for like, sharing, subscribing, and super chat. And we will be back shortly if something happens. But thanks for joining. Thanks for watching the content. And if we do have a video or if we do have something happening, I will chime back in. But I'm going to close this off and get ready to start the second live stream. So keep an eye out for that. But your main man, BTM here, bringing you back to the Black Tiger Miner News Network. Kind of tongue twister. But thanks for joining. And remember, let's get back to the money, guys. And as always, stay dangerous. Miner out.